So, if you are trying to be an author, one of the things you are going to have to become incredibly okay with is rejection. More so than even the dating game, getting into the publishing space is a numbers game, as you can see written so nicely up there. So in this video, we're not only going to talk about the process of getting rejected, but we're going to have a bit of a middle section where I'm going to set you up to be rejected, but eventually find success, hopefully, as effectively as possible, and change your mindset to understand that rejection just a part of the game, and you're searching for that golden egg. And I recently have gotten some pretty big rejections, and I would like to take that experience, ball up all the emotions it brought, make it productive, and present what I've learned for you here and now in a manic whiteboard video. And on top of that, I have twisted my agent's arm once again and asked Seth to take some important questions that I got from the Goblin Horde in regards to what they would like to know about the querying, publishing process from start to finish along the lines of the topic of rejection. So you're not just getting my dumb opinion, but you're also getting one of the best agents, in my opinion, feedback on these topics. Let us begin. The first thing that we're just going to get out of the way is you need to have thick skin going into this. But fortunately, it's kind of easier to do once you actually really understand how this system works, because rejection does not mean bad. It can mean bad, but depending on what you're being told, that can even be a good thing. This is all a bunch of people who love writing and art collaborating to find great books. No one is not on your side. Well, they're not against you. That's the important thing to keep in mind. Everyone in this process wants you to do the best possible because we all love literature. Keep that in mind. You can do it. Getting through here, you have to understand that there is going to be a specific ratio of rejections to acceptances. I tried to find specific numbers on like what the average is, but it depends on genre and the market. And my cat's hitting the door. He's gonna want to go out in 2 seconds. But just know that every single author, including the likes of Stephen King, Brandon Sanderson, frickin' I couldn't think of another famous author, but you get what I'm saying. All of them have been told no by this industry. The key to success is they kept going. And even if you have written a phenomenal book, you still might get told no purely based on market conditions. And he's back out. He just rammed his face onto the door while it opened. For example, one of the most clear changes in what agents have been looking for, at least just in recent years, is the cozy rise from the ashes of grimdark, specifically in the fantasy space. For a long time, people were looking for the next Joseph Abercrombie. And well, yes, you can absolutely still find success in the grimdark space now. There's a bit more fishing lures in the lake looking for cozy fantasy, and should not necessarily dictate what your manuscript is. Instead, what your manuscript is should actually inform our next topic, but we will get there. But let's actually say you have received your first rejection. This can come in multiple forms. There is, unfortunately, silence. You send something off, an agent never gets back to you, could even not be their fault. Some of them have company policies where they are not allowed to respond to everybody. They want their agent spending that time getting through more manuscripts. And so you don't be mad. It is just frustrating, though, to be left in crickets. So I can't give too much advice on what to do there because you will not know why they just ghosted you. But you have to just keep going. Don't let that be your ultimate no. Kind of, in my opinion, this is the most painful response because with every other response, there is at least something you can do. With this one,
there is nothing we can do. Nothing.
But let's say you got a no. This can come, again, in a few different forms. Not right for me. This is essentially the gentlest no, because they're not even saying it's bad. They're not even saying it needs revisions. But this individual agent does not think it fits their portfolio, will work for the connections they have, and it is, please take this as literally as the agent is telling you, not right for them, right? They need to have, from their perspective, the right catalog of authors, the right stable, and you're just not the horse to join their pack? Is it a pack of horses? Herd. Then you can also be told, this is bad. This needs work. Here's a bunch of things that I thought. And that's actually wonderful. Getting critical feedback from someone who is in the space and knows what they are talking about should not be something that just smashes your will to keep going against an anvil, and instead should be seen as an invaluable opportunity if you respect this person's opinion and you agree with some of the feedback or all of the feedback they're giving you to revise. And possibly they will ask you to resubmit. This is... Do not just resubmit unless they tell you revise and resubmit. Agents don't want to be bugged with the same thing again and again and again. There are specific languages and terms here that you will receive if you do get a response, and please listen to and obey them. You are unfortunately not going to be able to just rewrite something in such an immaculate way that an agent turns around and goes, "Oh my God, I said never again, but actually you've won me over." Though if you write a whole new book, then you can resubmit to the same agent. But aside from taking those notes into account, one of the first questions, and I think the most important I asked Seth, is what did he want to see more authors doing when they've hit this step, when they've gotten their first feedback? And a lot of people actually quit or stall out here and they freeze. So I asked Seth, what would he like to see more authors do in the face of rejection? And here's what he had to say.
There's a really fine line. I mean, we work in a world of rejection. This is one of the only businesses where getting passed on is normal, is expected. I could sell a book for $2 million and have 7 passes from publishers. Lots of stories about that pass from a publisher that you put on the wall as motivation. See Stephen King's history, etc. Like, these things all happen over and over again. And I think that it's important to recognize that. At the same time, there are absolutely tangible things that you should do. The biggest thing first is you have to really separate yourself from the ache you feel around rejection. I'm a writer who I've gone out with my adult novel and didn't sell it when I was younger. And I know what that's like. And you have to first ask yourself whether you want to keep dealing with rejection, like whether this is what you want to be doing. And most of the time the answer is yes. But I think it's a first quick thing, because once you sort of understand that, then you have to have a different kind of question, which is the rejection about this book in a way that I can make that book better and move forward with it? Or is rejection something that I should be looking at as putting this book into a drawer? That is a very hard thing to be figuring out, while also not being defeated. Putting a book into a drawer is a sign of growth and maturity, and really recognizing that you just got better, you just have exercised a lot, and now you can go at it again. Imagine writing the exact same book. You'd probably be able to write the best versions of it and miss a couple like darlings. So I think that's a really important step. But in terms of some specifics, I'll stop doing the high view because I have a lot more I could say about that. But one of the big problems with an edit, if you're given an edit, so let's talk about that as a rejection. There's passes and resubmits. There are simply edits that feel like a rejection, but let's assume you've passed the point where you're like, okay, this is not a rejection. This book should not have this edit. Actually, this edit's the right edit or whatnot. I think one of the big ones is the quick edit return. It's good to write fast, and especially in the world of the audience members here, there's a real understanding that if you're pumping out content, then you could be making more money, and there's truth to that. But I think one of the things that's most frustrating for both agents and editors, and sometimes friends of those people who are reading the books, is when you give notes, you take the time to read something, you take the time to put together notes and thoughts around it, and you give it to someone, they pop it back to you in 2 weeks with superficial edits to it. Sometimes it's not even superficial edits, they're like sort of real edits, but they're not the type that break the book down and fix it. They're the type that Band-Aid slap over something. And I can get how that's hard, because sometimes notes are, this voice sounds similar to that voice. So you go through and you're looking and you find the times where it seems similar and you try and change it. And you could change it 100 times and maybe that's the solution. But sometimes it means you have to rewrite that character. And if that's one of those instances, that's a hard edit to do. That's where you have to make those decisions, is whether you want to do those things. So that's probably like the biggest one, is the quick edit turnaround is sort of very frustrating. It's sort of frustrating when that happens. Are you getting the book to the best place it can be? Or are you just trying to like service someone's edits, or like not putting the time and effort into it? You can do shorter edits and that can be right. I'm not saying you have to spend 6 months on everything, but you do have to like think through an edit process. And then let's just pretend I'm not an agent and I'm just your friend, a beta reader who's just reading your book. You know how much work that is. Now, it's a relationship, it's a beta reader. A lot of times you're giving something back to them, but it's a lot of work. And there's a diminishing margin of return on reads, and that includes space. So it's helpful for you if you give that person some space. So what I would probably recommend is if you have a rejection, put that book in a drawer. If you're excited about things, make notes. Get all the notes out there. Get your notes going, like write it out, whatever. Put the book in the drawer, work on something else for a little bit. Even if you're saying 1 month, 3 weeks or something, give yourself some space from it. Then you come back to the notes, spend some time on the notes, think your way around the notes. Know that it's so annoying, it's so hard, I get it. But then once you break it open and you start having fun again, edits are hard, but once you break it open and you should start having fun again, because you're fixing something and you're creating something again. I mean, of course, that's different from like, oh, there's a lot of past tense here. There's a difference between like copy edit notes versus, you know, high view notes on something versus something that you might call somewhere in the middle. But I think that if you just look at it in the selfish perspective, like if you want a good read from that beta reader the next time around, give them some space and put some work into it, right? Or if you don't like their edits, then don't use them as a beta reader. It's not just an agent. Like it does matter as an agent. If you're doing a resubmit, definitely make sure you do a good job with it. And don't hurry, because we're not worried about it. We'd prefer the space. We'd prefer to finish the other things that are on our to-do list and then come back around to it when it feels like it's ready, unless they're demanding it. Like, give it to me, I want it, I'm so excited.
It is invaluable to walk away from a project for a while and just let it percolate. Let your mind, your subconscious mull over your story, take notes in an app or in a book, however you prefer to do. I found that physical notes are way better for me because I lose digital notes somehow. But this means when you come back to your story, you will be seeing it more similarly to the light of everyone else you are giving it to, because it is not so fresh. It is such a common phenomenon, especially after seeing Rejections and just being sitting in this book for so long, endlessly revising and trying to get it perfect, to no longer be able to see it clearly. You'll never be able to read your book as a first-time reader, but you can get far closer if you take a month or two away from it and go back in. I have never made more productive revisions to a project I have than after I have walked away from it for weeks to months. There are people out there who will tell you to just trunk a novel. I think that is a little bit of an outdated way to look at the current landscape, because I've been told by several agents they do not mind if something is indie published. One, if it hasn't found success, that just means it hasn't found the audience that exists out there because there's an ocean of competition. But two, if it does find success, then you have more leverage coming into a deal, and fantastic. So I think if it seems like you're not going to be getting any real attention from an agent for a certain project, go ahead and release it, maybe under a pen name, what have you. You can always come back and do a Stephen King and reclaim it later. But this allows you to basically get feedback on a work that you did not get an agent with, because if you want feedback, go start putting it in indie pub circles. And boy, if you manage to get some people's hands on it, you'll get that feedback for beta readers and so much more that you've been craving in the entire process. Just because something is put out in an indie space does not mean it cannot be traditionally published, picked up by an agent. There are so many success stories in this day and age who started in indie and got picked up by trad, and they faced rejections at first by trad, and then they proved those people wrong. Beautiful. Will that be you? Let's not bet on it. But I hear what you're saying. Daniel, I'm not even at the point where I am ready to start querying. How do I even set up to the point where I get into this system? It is an intimidating landscape out there. Don't worry, I got you. Because organization is going to be your friend. I like to think of this whole setup to hunting down the field of agents out there as analytical dating. You need to, as much as a creepy dude bro on dating advice videos tries to game dating apps, sure, try and figure out how you are best going to get responses in the publishing space from the agents you're interested in. And it's not creepy because you're not trying to have sex with these people. You are instead trying to get them to represent you. So it's okay. You need to research the hell out of people and publishers. I am in an incredibly privileged position. I want to absolutely address that. I even put a box around it here where I had agents come to find me because of my platform. But I am also engaged to a wonderful author, and they are hyper researched, organized, trying to find an agent who will rep them. And watching this has been a great learning experience for me. Kayla has done a meticulous job of putting out Excel spreadsheets where names of agents are there, why she thinks they might be good matches for her, their response times, all this different information she personally thinks will be useful to process is listed out, organized, and updated continually. And that will be a tremendous help to you, not only in the upfront stages where you're going to be planning when and how to approach these people, paying attention to when their queries open, because they're not always open, but once you're in the middle of this ongoing process that can take years, you'll be updating this list to go, okay, this person said no, this person said revise and submit, and you will not have the confusion, the mistake of having 40, 50 agents that you've queried, hearing back from 7, but forgetting which ones you liked for which reason. An additional advantage to keeping this kind of grid as well is finding acceptance from even an agent is a multi-step process. You are going to query them and send them a few pages. Then they may ask for a partial request or a full request of your manuscript. And at that point, you could again face rejection. It's just, you really want to start keeping everything organized so you know who has what in their hands, in what version, and how they are feeling about it. This, in my opinion, if you're going to do anything, I know a lot of you out there are not the most organized people. I am not. But having this kind of system in place, especially in the long game, is going to have exponential benefits and payoff for you.
So regarding my Excel spreadsheet organization that I have there, I think the key things to do is also to color code. So you have an idea of which agents have rejected up front, which ones have accepted, asked for partials, asked for fulls, but also which ones belong to similar agencies that you may want to query if your initial choice rejects you. There are also agencies that do not allow you to query anyone else in the agency. They will determine if it needs to be passed off. So please make sure you do your research on their websites. Those would be the websites that are for the actual agency.
Which also takes me to every query letter you send out should be personalized. This is a resume. Look into who this agent is, what their past successes have been, and how your book can appeal to those specific angles. You don't want to overdo your query letter. You don't want to be putting videos in there like that one girl from the blonde movie about Harvard. What am I? Legally Blonde. Don't overdo it. But definitely try and stand out as best you can. Personalize it to the point where the agent understands, oh, this person really cares about reaching out to me. Because you're playing a numbers game, yes, you are absolutely submitting to a bunch of people, but they're not random. They are people who you have filtered through because you don't want to be represented by an agent that's not a good fit for you. This is deliberate, and they will appreciate that. On top of that, you are going to be changing your book during this process. As much as people tell you, hey, once you're sending it out, don't make changes. I know you. You have zero self-control. You're going to have an idea. You're going to have a thought, and you're going to tweak stuff. And having all this listed out will also remind you which version is in which person's hand, because you should not make small changes or even big changes. And then in the middle of someone going through just your first 10 pages, which is often what they're doing at this point, give them something new, because that will annoy them. So avoid that, but remember who has what. And if you're wondering, hey, where do I even get all of this information? Fantastically, we live in the day and age of the internet. And there are these 3 websites that will monstrously help you get started.
Now, these websites here, querytracker.net, Publishers Marketplace, and Manuscript Wishlist, these are going to be your golden trifecta. Querytracker.net, you do have to pay a small fee to get the premium version. I find it super useful. It keeps track of all your queries. Some of them can be uploaded into the online form on the space itself, which is how some agents will only accept manuscripts. Some will only accept through email. Some still take snail mail, very few, and some have their own online forms. But all of that is available to keep the data on querytracker.net. You will also see when other authors have posted their query dates, when they got their rejections, when they got their acceptance, once they got their requests. So you can get the data analytics for that. It will also break down the percentages of response rates from agents as well as their ratio of acceptance to rejections, which is something you should look at when you have maybe multiple agents in one agency that you're considering and you're trying to decide which one you would like to go with. Take a look at their response rate. If you're going to be waiting for 120 days versus, 16 days, maybe that will help you decide which agent you want to go with. Secondly, Publishers Marketplace isn't just a good place to see their manuscript wish list, because a lot of the agents will post that on their agent page on Publishers Marketplace. Again, I think there's a small fee to access this. Well worth it in my opinion. But on top of that, you get to see their deal makers page. So you can see specifically throughout the years what agency has represented what kind of deals they've managed to get, what kind of imprints or publishers they tend to work with. So if you maybe see an agent who is accepting a lot in your field, but they're actually working with smaller imprints that you're not really focused on, maybe that's not the right agent for you. Or vice versa. Either way, do your deep diving on there. Really try to see where their connections are outside of their own space. And finally, manuscript wishlist should be like your first place to go for every agent, because most, I would say 90% of the agents have a manuscript wish list. This is a separate website that goes into far more detail of what they're looking for. Some might not have that, but I would say most do. So you should check that out. They update it regularly, and it gives the most up-to-date information on how you should be querying. Because some agents have their own specific preferences compared to their overall agency. I hired someone to take a look at my first prologue, my first few pages, as well as my query letter. It was absolutely invaluable to me because it completely changed how I structured my book in the beginning and how I approached selling it. I wouldn't have gotten that feedback had it not been for the person that I went to work with. Query letters need to be concise. They need to be short. They need to be blunt. First paragraph, give your name, what the book is, how many words it is, give a few up-to-date kind of comp titles that you can give. Second paragraph needs to be an overall pitch of your story. Give it 1 to 2 sentences, maybe even just a 1-sentence thing of here's how I would summarize my book story. And then your last paragraph, small bio on you. But it should not be a long-winded, definitely should not be more than 1 page, because most agents will tell you they do not have the time to go through and read all that. They will skim a lot of the letters and seek out the key information. So I recommend bolding and or capitalizing your comp titles so they really come off the page, are easy to read and easy to find. And then on top of that, same thing goes for if you have a synopsis to submit with your query or your manuscript pages. Double check the formatting of that, because some people are sticklers enough where they will reject it if you do not follow that. If you sent it as an attachment instead of an insert into your email, they will just toss it out. And finally, make sure that your synopsis is doing what it's supposed to. You are trying to prove to the agent that you are able to structure a fully sound, complete arc of a story. This isn't to leave space for you to have some suspense or like, come check it out. This isn't the back cover of your book. This is you showing the agent, here is my full story. I can describe all of the key points on 1 page, double spaced. So make sure you do your research on how to properly send in all this information. Don't just assume you have it right. It took me 3 days to get my first full manuscript request, which is super exciting, and I got really pumped. But something you have to remember is just because somebody asks to see your full manuscript doesn't mean you're going to get an offer of representation either. Still waiting, as of now, to hear back on that. 12 days since I sent in the first submission. According to the data analytics, it will take this person about 24 days to a month to get through my submission before I should hear a response about it. But other agents, regarding the different types of rejections here, one came back after asking for a partial. I think it took 5 days from my query. They wanted a partial. And once I sent half the manuscript, they came back and the response wasn't a rejection because of me or my story. The rejection was, this is a genre bender that I don't have the experience that I feel I can properly represent it and sell it the way that you need to be sold. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me and my skill set and my experience, which I took as, kind of a compliment because, yeah, I wrote something that bends through a few different genres, and I would like to be partnered with someone who has the experience in selling that. So again, rejections come in all shapes and sizes.
Before we move on to this next area of rejection, though, I do want to talk about the fact that you should consider junior agents. In fact, I would really encourage people to take a good, long, hard look at junior agents out there because, well, yes, getting an established agent with a catalog of successful authors can be great. If you are a debut author, having a hungry junior agent who often works at an agency that has a lot of the same connections as these more established, harder to get agents can also be beneficial. They are looking to become established, reputable, huge agents. And you know how they do that? By making you an established, successful author, and they will be focused on you. These people, junior agents, have a lot to prove, just like you do at this point. I'm not saying exclusively go for them, but I am saying do not rule them out. In fact, Seth had this to say about junior agents.
You know, I'm talking against myself, right, as not a junior agent, but I think that junior agents still make mistakes. This is why I believe, sort of senior agents, but this is why I believe it's important to go with a junior agent that would be at a place of support for that person, or rather that's a helpful bonus. Like you can still go with a junior agent at a place that is sort of the only one who does sci-fi and fantasy in the corner. That can happen too. But it's helpful to have a support because what we do, like if I have a question even now, which of course I do sometimes, is that you go to your colleagues. So a junior agent will go to me and ask me questions and I will help them. And so there's no things that they don't really know what to do. The advantage of the senior agent can be our list and our connections, but I don't have the connections that the junior agent does with the new hungry up and coming agents as well, right? There's a different kind of game to be played all the way around. I mean, I remember the first book I sold 1 million copies called The Tiger's Wife. It did really well and I sold it to an assistant editor. And what's funny is that it's a literary book and it's back when we used to say magical realist. And I remember that I didn't send it to Knopf and to Little Brown and to a number of places that 100% would be on a first round submission for a literary fiction book. And I sold it at auction and it did really well and Random House published it. And Random House proper, like the imprint of Random House. Would a senior agent would have had Knopf on that list and maybe Knopf would have bought it and not done as well as Random House. Like, so I would, in some ways you consider that a mistake, right? But the enthusiasm was there, the negotiation was there, me with it every step of the way was there. And that author is my son's godmother, right? Like these things grow, you grow with your people. And so the relationship is real. And I feel like if you find someone who gets you, who's enthusiastic, who like has good editorial notes, like if you have a big person who's not read your book or has only read part of your book, or their notes are not as good as a junior person, you really should stop and think about whether that's like going to be the right person for you. They might get you the first deal out of the gate in maybe a slightly bigger way, but it might be a less good product and therefore worse for you overall, right? So, and then maybe they'll be less interested in you if it doesn't work, right? Which is awful to say, but there's also probably longevity around junior agents holding on to people. So you know, I just think that you should absolutely sprinkle at the very least.
And Kayla touched something in her section that I think is a very delicate topic that Seth and I talked about as well, which is spending money on your book. It's not necessarily bad. As Kayla pointed out, there are invaluable resources that can really help you from your pitch to advice on how you could possibly shift your entire narrative. But there's also very bad advice out there where people are saying before you even query an agent, you need to hire all these different editors to go completely through your book from A to Z and spend thousands of dollars. Do not do that. Agents do not expect to receive a fully edited book. They do not expect it to be finished. They expect it to be an interesting story they can sell. Grammar, spelling, punctuation stuff, that'll be handled later by a publisher. That burden is not on you. Be very, very careful about how you spend money on your manuscript and avoid people who try and charge you way too much. There are still sharks and predators in these seas.
The goal has always been for you never to spend any money on a book. I think an illustrated project is where you might have to spend some money up front. For a regular book, aside from maybe getting a software tool that helps you write easier if you prefer that, and I don't mean AI, I'm talking about like, you know, what are some of the platforms I'm totally blanking on? Yes, exactly, Scrivener, thank you. So any of those, you know, those ones, those are tools to help you just get moving. I think the investment of time and energy should probably be around finding your group of people that you can trust and edit towards, as opposed to, your parents or someone who's just too positive, too yeses, the yes men on you. People ask the question, sure, all the time. When am I ready to submit to an agent? The book should be finished. That should be when, for sure. And this is general. There's always exceptions to the rules, but those exceptions are usually not for whoever's listening. It's usually for like a platform creator for a particular reason. So it should be finished, and it should be edited in a way where you aren't saying, I'll fix that later. You think it's ready to go. It's not going to be ready to go all the way to a reader in a bookstore. Why? Because if you send it to me and it's amazing and you spend $1,000 on an editor or whatever, I will still edit it. And then you'll do another edit. And then I'll submit it to an editor who will edit it. And then give it to a copy editor who will edit it. And we're talking about, there are edits to go. That money the $20,000 you spent on an editor, that editor is not going to not get away with like having all your edits. It's not really the way it goes. So you get it to as far as you can get it. And it is helpful to have readers read it with you and help you get it to that next level. Bad grammar is something we're going to fix. Like that's something, a misspelled word on a page, sure, I'll note it. I'm not being lazy about it, but that's something that either you're going to fix or a copy editor is going to fix or whatever. It's not going to make you a worse writer. Doesn't mean you don't care about spelling. Doesn't mean you shouldn't care about bad grammar. It's more about if it's an endemic issue, then that's a problem. If your first 20 pages is filled with spelling errors and grammatical errors, that's a problem, right? The front of the book should definitely be as pretty as can be. But if you have those kind of small errors throughout, don't kill yourself like that. Like if you submit a book to someone and then like, the next day you say, oh, here, take this draft. I found a small error. That's probably not an error that would have been noticed, or even if it was, it might have been like, what kind of person is going to take points off for a grammatical error on page 212? No one. Now, again, page 1, you should get your act together. Page 20 should be pretty clean. That's just because we're trying to get the rhythm of your trust. But honestly, I usually know very quickly, and you guys do too, whether you can trust an author to a level. And in the spaces of self-publishing, Royal Road stuff, Lit RPG, progression fantasy, you guys know when you're reading something where you're like, well, the writing could be better, but I'm really enjoying the story. But you make a choice there. Now, editors who are buying stuff, they don't get to make that same kind of choice. Sometimes on heavily platformed things, they're going to make a money choice because it's a business, right? But when it comes in straight from like the ground floor, it's got to have a different level of writing ability, I would say, while also recognizing the danger of me saying that, because you writing an entertaining book that's got a lot of mistakes or whatever is still something that could sell a lot of copies, and I recognize that. But it's why I still don't represent heavily platformed big creators in the self-published space whose book I don't like. I still want to love the thing that is going around, and I do care about that stuff.
And then I would say something that Seth and I focused on quite a bit is just focus on your story, making it clean, making it as simple but effective as possible. You can always add more, but when it comes to getting attention in this space, you want to have something that feels like you've polished and really understood the concepts that you're trying to get across in your narrative. That's actually going to take us to my specialty in this video, rejection. Even once you get an agent, you are still going to be receiving rejection. This is not something that just ends. Got an agent? Well, you can still actually break up with your agent. We'll talk about that. Now you can also be, once you're with your agent, rejected by publishers. You can have editors leave. This is a field of rejection, and you are sprinting through, bombs going off around you, trying to reach the other side. Understand that's the mentality, and you will not break. But let's talk about actual experience with rejection, which I've gotten. I'm currently on the 6th version of my book, Better Dead. I just sent it off to Seth a couple months back, and he got back to me telling me, Act 1 is great. Really solid. Good setup. Act 2 and 3, redo them. And that hurt. I have redone this book, except after I sat with it for a minute, realized this is wonderful. Because honestly, in my opinion, writing a book, the first act is the hardest, setting everything up, trying to get the story going. That's difficult. But from there, you're springboarding off your foundations. And so the feedback I essentially got was, your foundations are solid. Go from there again, which I'm able to do. And if that sounds like I'm coping, yes, learn to cope. Learn to cope with the feedback you get, use it as inspiration, and move forward. Because also, every single time you come back to your book, you are a better author because you just got through it before, you took a bit of a break to make your head clear, and now you'll be able to do it even better this time. That is the mentality you will keep from start to finish. I actually talked to Seth about this, and he thought we might break up over this. Yes, it's a relationship, as I said, analytical dating. Here's what he had to say. And then I'd love to kind of come to a conclusion here, getting to like our specific example, because the whole video is about the fact that I recently got notes back from you that are like, hey, this needs a large story change. And it was kind of funny from my perspective because I've been really nervous to get this feedback. And I got this, feedback from you. And my honest reaction when I saw what your notes were thank God I was right. Because as I had sat with it and as I had kind of re-examined Better Dead, it ended up validating a lot of the insecurities I had. And it was like, great, I could take another hack at this. Wonderful. But what made me laugh is there's almost this tone from you that was like, I'm nervous to send you a no. And so it kind of seems like agents also have to deal with a fear of rejection, a fear of an author being angry and pushback. And there's more of the dynamic to that relationship than I initially thought going into it.
Well, thank you for noticing that. That's very true. I mean, where do most breakups happen is around a book edit. Is not book one, not edit one, but like, I just sent an edit letter that was a long one that had some hard truths in it, and we'll talk about that. But Daniel could have read that and said, "I disagree with you. I think this is great, and therefore you're not the right agent for me." Or said, "I think it's great. I want you to go out with it," and I would have said, "Therefore, I'm not the right agent for you." So it's actually the nervousness is about the relationship because that's the point. That's that place. And I'm not nervous about like a first round edit. Usually, no one wants to give bad news, and there's different kinds of edits. And this edit, so just to give some from my perspective, background is that we've worked on a number of iterations of this book, and I've told you sort of time and again, I think this is the right book. Like this is a good idea. This is something that is building correctly. But I think that what I've noticed happening over time, partially because I think you're a fast writer, it's almost like you're not even revising slapdash, but rather you're building scaffolding or you're building extensions onto buildings that look individually good. And when we stepped back, we saw that they weren't all fitting together. And at first, it was something we could futz with because they were answering some of the issues that we had, both of us. But then as we got bigger, it created separate wings where it was like different styles of a house all together. And we had to make some big decisions. And then, so the hard part about my note to you is that I gave you different options, and some of it is cut down a wing, and some of it is put the whole house in a drawer and see if we want to go back to and work on something else, because maybe it's not about, I still firmly believe that the book you're writing is a book I would like to see published, but maybe part of the issue is that you're looking at each thing both individually and as a whole, and you can be proud of something you do individually, and it's not even Kill Your Darlings, but it's a version of that. It's like the cousin of that. It's like good writing can infect a book badly. And what happened here, by the way, is I had read it now a number of times, and I gave it to my associate who's worked with me for 10 years and reads in the same genre and whatnot for a longer, more like brand new edit on it, because I wanted to sort of preserve some. I read a chunk of it and was noticing some of these issues, and he got to a different spot than I have in terms of placement, but it all made sense to me in terms of the way the edit plays. And it was hard to write it. Sometimes when I get a note from an associate, I edit that note and like make it so that it's mine, because it's like, this is what I agree with, and also here's my notes, and here. This one I just left it separate and had my thoughts on it and had some specifics in text and wanted to sort of show you the whole picture. And Daniel, I had to say, this is, and for audience, this is the first time saying this to him straight up here, is like, this is a challenge for you. This is like, when I heard you at the beginning of this say that you're starting to come back on this, like, I want you to put it aside for, which you have been, but to even put those notes aside, because I was excited about you working on something else, just because it felt like, all right, now I know you've got the skill. I know you have like stuff that like you can write and can get to, and I'll take a look at that. Like, maybe that's the thing that's going to have a stronger through line. And I'm worried. My worry here, without seeing any edits, My worry is that the scaffolding or that the wings continue. This would be for any writer. Is that then it's like, all right, so we'll pull down a larger chunk, and then we put in a different wing, because you have to start. It's basically like we said, we're sort of starting again in some ways, and it's like, is the real sad truth that you need to redo the entire book in the way that's the best, perfect way, completely outlined? Or is it that we actually just rip off a thing and start here? Or is it that, hey, we found the right way in here and we did figure it out? All those things could be true, but I know that we've tried a couple things, and the things that you've been creating have been good, but they haven't fit the whole tone of what we're trying to do with the book. And that has been the problem, is they've been too good to throw away. Too good to not like extend further. Too good for even me to be like, well, let's not. So this time, part of my conversation around it was almost letting Jack hit me on the head. My associate hit me on the head and say, all right, well, hey, you got to see that this isn't working, even though you want it to work because you like this idea and you like his writing ability, and that's a hard thing for you to hear. But to hear you come back to me and say, this is what I was thinking too, also sort of validates our relationship, like as we're sort of in some of the right places.
In my opinion, though, absolutely not. I specifically sought out an agent that would tell me no, and I love the fact that Seth is telling me no. I want to deliver the best possible book, and I trust his taste, not only because he is an experienced agent, but I specifically enjoy a lot of the authors he represents, and I'd like to join their ranks. So I am eager to be told no again next time, because I will do even better again. But it might not have been the right move to stick with Seth. I want to emphasize that. You could get an agent, and as insane as this sounds, if you're going back and forth and it's just not vibing, breaking up can be good. Keep that in mind. It is a last resort. It is not something you want to do as an author, but it is a possibility. Now, one of the things that also made this go down a bit easier is I was obeying my own advice and putting the notes in drawers and also sending off my book to be in other people's hands and getting feedback while waiting on Seth. Shout out to Kronk. I sent it to this wonderful booktuber. He got back to me with thoughts. I mulled them over. And so by the time Seth actually got back to me, I was expecting some of his feedback. And it was a relief to realize, okay, what I've been planning to go forward from here works. And Seth and I are in agreement about it at this point. Awesome. And this takes me to the most difficult balance, in my opinion, throughout this entire process. For your own sanity, you are going to have to maintain. You need to be your most realistic yet harsh critic. And those in this space are contradictory ideas, but you have to sit on that rope and balance those two things. What do I mean? Well, you need to be harsh in the fact that way you're ahead of a lot of the stuff that could feel devastating, having to rewrite 80,000 plus words like I just got told. It's going to be something that allows you to have thicker skin, better armor, and understand, once again, you are running through a battlefield. Yet, you need to be realistic. And I have talked to so many authors about this. I just did a stop with Evan Lycum on his book tour, where he specifically even emphasized the book he put out does not feel like it's 100%. And I have talked to authors as established as bestsellers you have read repeatedly who will tell you no book they've put out has felt like it's 100%. No book is ever truly done. You are polishing and polishing and polishing until everyone around you says it's good to go, and then you have to let it go. So it is a realistic yet harsh critic, because you do not want to get caught in the endless forever edit. Because especially if you get caught in the endless edit early on where you are never able to let it go, you're never even going to venture on to these next steps. It's going to sound insane, but even if you know your book is flawed in some ways, you got to get it in the system. You have to start this process, which is so scary, yet so true. You're never going to have a perfect book. A perfect book has never been written.
But one thing that happens a lot, though, is that you can also edit forever. This happens a lot. Some people's first draft, like every line is sort of pretty good. Like, you're not worried about that. It's just, okay, now let's massage things around. But a lot of people sort of vomit things on the first round. It's very common, right? And before you're even giving an edit back to someone, you're probably doing another round yourself or something, right? But your first edit, your first writing is not the strongest, and it's not supposed to be the strongest, right? Especially if you're writing fast. But a lot of times what also happens is, let's just make it very clear. Let's say chapters 3 through 6 aren't working, and you decide, instead of to try to edit, you want to throw them out and you want to rewrite them. And let's say magically You can do that without having to fix anything else in the book, just so we're focused on this little example. A lot of times what happens, and I encourage that. Like, I encourage you to rewrite something because it should be stronger in a lot of ways. But a lot of times what's sent back to me is still that first round stuff that then needs its own run of edits. It's a long enough chunk that thing, it needs a lot of work, and we have to go back to it. And that's fine. That's a normal thing that happens. However, if then when I say, hey, this thing, here, it needs these edits here, then that 3 chapters are ripped out again and rewritten again, then we're still back to square 2. Not 1, because you just did it, but square 2. So there's a number of writers who actually over rip out. Once they find the right solution, then it's about editing the text to get to a certain space, as opposed to ripping things out again and trying it up again from the beginning. But it will always be like an earlier draft, and therefore we'll always have to work on that thing and that thing and that thing. And sometimes it just happens again and again because that rip out doesn't give you the opportunity to grow with whatever's there. So at some point in time, you need to fix the overall issue, like put the frame in, feel like that's working, it's the right choice and direction, and then your edits are about fixing the draft, making the writing better, making it smooth better, making whatever, and not something where you're throwing it out again and starting again from scratch. So there's a time and place for starting from scratch. And if you keep on doing that, then either you'll never end the book, you'll write a book that's not in the quality, the final run quality that it can be, or it's you telling yourself you shouldn't be writing this book. It's like, it's not the right one, right?
Then just a miscellaneous development piece of advice that I actually believe is responsible for me having to basically rework my second and third acts for Better Dead is one of the key symptoms that you are about to enter the forever edit is your concepts are ballooning. This is a mistake I made, and it really ended up bogging down my book. I start putting every idea, every concept I had into the material and kept thinking, this is good, this is great, this is great. Just because an idea is great does not mean it matches the story it's in. And Seth actually talked about this as well.
I won't get into all this stuff that could possibly put out to the public, but my focus on this rewrite is just lean and mean, because I have an issue where I'm a big fantasy fan. So if I have a big fantasy idea, I put it in my book all the time, and I don't say no to myself, and it's like, bigger, bigger, bigger. And I was talking to Kayla about your notes, and she's like, I agree. It seems like you put 3 books worth of ideas in here. You need to cut it back, make it a lean hot rod, and then, go from there. And the best thing that I heard was like, hey, the first act from both of you guys was like solid setup, and that's where you need to change things from there. I'm going back through and fully reworking, from beginning to end, and I'm trying to just get down to the core ideas that'll make this story really work, reducing characters, taking a lot of the more interesting conflict notes that I think both of you had. And that's kind of my whole thing, because I agree with you. There are ideas here that I have a really hard time letting go of. But there are other ideas I love that once I started taking them out, I realized, I love that idea, but it's really easy to let it go. So maybe it's not the right idea for this book.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting? I love hearing this. One of my favorite, again, this is personal, but one of my favorite things to read in a book, which I see in Gene Wolfe, I see in Michael Swanwick, or his short stories, Stations of the Tide as well. I see it in Will White. I see it in some of these creators, the ability to have one of these ideas that you love that are big, but giving them, but still integrating them, but not even, but in a very small way. So I think one of the issues that you're talking about is that you have this idea, well, let's develop it some, and then it becomes a bit of a tumor. And I'm dead serious. How many times when you read Gene Wolfe are you like, that page had one cool character that could have been a whole series described in one paragraph, and he's gone. She just died. And what? But how much do you love that? And that's and ironically, the person who described this the best for me was as a baker. The cronut. I represented the guy who created the cronut, Dominic Ansel, and he said in a talk, "Don't be afraid to use your ideas. Don't hoard them. Use those ideas. If you need to write a short story about it or another book about it, fine. But if you're putting in the book, don't have it be, you don't have to run with it in that full direction. Feel free to trust yourself to use it on that page, to make that page fucking awesome. But then onwards, and that's stuff that readers will be like, yo.
So if I had one final piece of advice to maybe improve your book's chance of navigating this entire wild system, it would be to keep in mind lean and mean. Even if you're writing epic fantasy, do not cram every concept in. I tried to put basically every idea in this book that should have been an entire series, and instead hint at stuff. Maybe put a reminder in the text that you know that means it's going to be developed way later on in the next book. If it's a standalone, maybe it's just something you can hint at. But you need to have your book, no, not grammatically perfect, no, not punctuated perfectly, but instead an enjoyable, focused read. That's the best thing it can be to get through this system so that you can actually get to the point where a publisher wants to pick you up after an agent signs you.
The best advice that I got from the person who had taken a look at my manuscript in its first roughest form was, instead of adding in anything new, see if there's any way you can have it or what's happening relate to what has happened previously or reference something that has happened previously. So going off of the don't balloon idea, I, in my story, had introduced a whole new group of characters midway, and I was told, why not just use the characters that we've already been introduced in the front part? It's a very simple change that at the time seemed so obvious, but when I was writing it, I couldn't see it at the time because I already had this set idea in my head.
But that is just all the advice that both Kayla and I could give in this messy, wild trad space we're trying to navigate together. It's a lot of fun. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're an author who is either through this process or in it with us right now, give us some additional advice. I know a lot of people are looking for better ways to find more beta readers. There's currently, I believe, a channel in my Discord server even where people are exchanging manuscripts and beta reading for each other. So join that if you'd like to. And like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.